What happens when someone who's lived at the intersection of code and biology starts placing bets on the future of medicine? Well, today's guest on the Russo Edge podcast isn't your typical investor. In fact, he's an outsider who's bringing artificial intelligence and tech bio investing to transform how we discover and fund medical breakthroughs. So, whether you're building a life science company or backing one, this conversation is about what it takes to win. Welcome to the Russo Edge podcast. I'm your host, Solomon Wilcots, and today we're speaking with Sahir Ali, scientist, entrepreneur, and the founder and solo general partner of Modi Ventures. Now, Sahir has spent his entire career at the cutting edge of technology in biotech, from coding software as a teenager, working on Wall Street, AI research in cancer labs, to launching a successful e-commerce company. He's taken a non-traditional path into biotech venture capital. Now, starting Modi Ventures, he's pioneering an investment strategy in what he calls BioStack, where advances in digital technology and biology converge to reinvent healthcare. Sahir, welcome to the Russo Edge podcast. How you doing today?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited. Thanks, Solomon.
Well, great to have you as well. Let's get started by telling your story. You've had a unique path, and of course, you've called yourself an outsider, and you even describe yourself as a parallel entrepreneur because you are doing so many different things all at once. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so this parallel entrepreneur term comes from Nubar, at least that's where I first heard. And it really defines the immigrant mindset because you're just trying to see what will stick. And so any opportunity you get, you tend to sort of grab it. And so that's kind of what happened in my case. Coming into the country, I got myself into Dean Kamen's robotics program, which gave me the exposure. I became highly technical. And luckily, I could code really, really well, even before I was 15, 16, which led to my entrance into Wall Street early. At the same time, I also picked up Salesforce.com, which was early those days, uh, with my brother involved in that e-commerce company. And at the same time, I started doing research at the intersection of AI and cancer. So if you think about these pathways, they kind of stuck with me. And at some point, they started converging together, which led to Modi Ventures. But ultimately, yes, I call this parallel entrepreneurship because I am scientifically trained. I am an entrepreneur, but I'm also a very quantitative mindset in how I think about the world.
Very comprehensive. So that's really exciting. Every venture fund has its thesis, right? A lens for how they invest. In your case, you talk about something called the BioStack. Now, what is the BioStack and how does it guide your investment strategy with Modi Ventures?
Yeah, I'd like to think about where some of the technologies are sort of converging, and that typically tends to give an opportunity for us to think about the next 10, 15, 20-year horizon. As venture capitalist, that's sort of the horizon you have, so you can start to make some bets today. And when it comes to biology, medicine, and all of that, over the last 2 decades, there are these sort of three core technologies, in my opinion, that have been converging for some time now. And so the one of those is the rise of digital biology and synthetic biology. What I mean by that is, since Human Genome Project, we have been digitizing this stack, which I call the biostack. As you said, let me just define what I consider the biostack. When you have such amount of data that is digitized, you can now start to think about read, write, and reprogramming the entire biostack. So what that ultimately leads us is a paradigm shift on how we think about disease. How do we understand disease? How do we treat disease? But also we start to think about cures. We've just not had that many cures. So ultimately, that's the thesis of Modi Ventures. What's exciting is that this just allows us to think about how do we ultimately engineer life itself. So that's a core broad thesis.
Oh, it's really great information. And so I hear biotech is famously high risk, but it's also high reward. Some say it can cost over $2 billion to bring a new drug to market. And most drug programs still fail. As an investor, how do you manage those risks?
Right. And so I tend to think a little bit more quantitatively about that. And,
Hmm.
folks who are in the biotech quantitative space would recognize Andrew Lowe's work in that space, where he's he identified that, look, in a biotech, an asset has sort of exactly that sort of volatility, $2 billion, 14 years, and that volatility is more than 200, 300%. And so who's going to invest in such a volatile asset?
Yeah, yeah,
But if you start to combine a few of those in the right area, rare disease, you can actually bring the volatility down, which was over the last 10 years, we've seen the rise of funds going after rare disease. And that's the whole idea. However,
yeah.
if we take a step back, yes, there's volatility. However, there are some deterministic outcomes that can happen. So, for example, when an asset enters phase one, uh, we start to see some sort of deterministic outcomes. There are sort of biopharma who will want to pick up that asset at a phase one, phase two, particularly where most of these assets would exit either IPO or get
Hmm.
acquisition. Compared to tech investment, yes, a company can go to Series A, B, C, D, but
Hmm.
there aren't really deterministic outcome as such. But in this space, yes, the volatility is high, but at phase two, you can see there will be some deterministic outcomes. At phase three, you can actually benefit from some royalty sort of deals and things like
Yeah,
that. So that's
yeah.
how we think about it, at least on the pure biotech side. Of course, we also do devices and purely in silico plays, the different models apply. But when it comes to sort of therapeutics, that's how we tend to think about things.
So, what about the founders themselves? You worked with academic scientists who have turned CEOs. In your view, what qualities make great biotech founders or CEOs in that leadership role?
Right. Yeah, I think so. Look, first, it just all starts with intellectual honesty and humility. You just have to understand that a startup is a path that is a curvy path, and you don't know everything. So number one thing is, particularly scientists who are turning CEOs and founders have to recognize their own limitations, but the ability to be coachable and stay sort of humble, but have the sort of tenacity to sort of navigate this curvy path. It's not going to be easy, but that's sort of what a startup is, but the rewards could be much higher. The second part is the scientific depth. It's just in the therapeutic space. It's just required. You can't just fake it till you make it sort of situation in this space, particularly when we're talking about this space, even in devices. So that's important. I think the third, the most important thing, according to me and investors, is ability to story tell the narrative. It is, I think, in particularly the biotech world, I think there's much to be left for desire to be desired. How you tell your story so that investors understand, although they may not be as sophisticated as you are, because you need to spend 7 years in your PhD postdoc doing this work. So storytelling to me becomes very, very important. And as I mentioned, that ability to kind of build the right team around, which is part of um, a founder's sort of has to be part of the mojo, is the can I attract right amount of people. So I think these are some of the things that I tend to look for. Ultimately, in an early stage company, you're making some bets on what the science will work out, or inhuman or device will have commercial. But one of the number one things you're looking for is their team. There's the right founding team. Are they going to be the one that's going to take the cross? So the founder is very important. What characteristics they bring to table.
Absolutely. Now, when a founder is pitching you, what's the first thing that you want to know? And what is your sort of mental model for pressure testing early companies?
Yeah, the very first question always comes up is, what problem are you really solving for?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
is this a solution looking for a problem? I mean, of course, and it can broadly apply to anything, really, from tech to any investment, really. Second is, really, why now? Sometimes some things are just way out of its time. So you have to
Mhm.
be able to say, what are you solving for?
Yeah,
Why is it the right time today? And also, why you?
yeah.
So these are some really top level, high level things that you just have to grab uh, an investor's attention. I would say in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the pitch,
Yes.
even I would say sooner.
Yeah.
So those are the three things that applies basically to devices, therapeutics, and all. But if we were to say in biotech particularly, then the science, the mechanism of action, where's the IP from, what is the unmet need in the market? Is this yet another way of doing something, or is this going to be a complete game changer? If it is
Yeah.
so, what does a regulatory pathway look like? I think one of the things that I'm really critically looking for early is that do founders understand the regulatory pathways? And I think some tend to kind of brush that over for later. So I really like to see what would be the pathway if it's a complete brand
Yeah.
new sort of way of doing things, particularly even recruitment of the patients and all. I think these are challenges that I think upfront having an understanding on how to mitigate that is also very important. And again, I will say this again: ideas are by dime a dozen. It comes down to execution.
Yeah.
Do you have the right team? And if you don't, if you're the first time founder, you must have people around you in the advisory, or bring somebody on to say, I compensate for lack of experience, but I am the person to
Mhm.
be able to do this. Again,
Yeah.
high level framework, which roughly applies to really anyone pitching in the venture space, not just biotech, but in
Yeah.
biotech, you really have to focus on science, IP as a lot more, and the patient populations, all of that. But I'm giving a high level framework that applies across the what I call the biostack.
There you go. A lot of work making sure that all the bases are covered. Well, and not in every investor is ready to back a preclinical or a biotech platform company. So, how can founders tailor their pitch to fit maybe different capital appetites? And how do you spot what is a feature versus a real company?
Right. So let me start with in biotech therapeutics. Data. Data just speaks for itself. You got to think about, how do I have a strong data package, strong in vivo proof of concept for the lead asset, show clear superiority of data versus what's out there. Just got it. So data always speak for itself. This is not tech investment where you can sort of do thought experiments on network effects and all. So right. So now, of course, if we also do devices and a few other things. In those cases, yes, a little bit of different framework of price. One thing that just applies to everybody is: do you have a clear sense of milestones, and have you done financial modeling on how much capital do you need compared to those milestones? And is it that you need to get into IND? Is it that you need to get a prototype and sort of get get a first beta testing to a milestone? So these are very important, sort of milestone driven, and you raise accordingly, and always raise a bit more. As you know, there's the curvy path. Um, and I think that, again, the team is very important, and I think you always have to think about the valuation of the company, and what sort of investors you bring on. I think especially early stage, you must have investors who are value add beyond just a check. And I think sometimes my advice to founders are: investors can also make or break the company. So right set of investors, lead, syndicate, these are very important. Also, given the market condition, you have to give yourself a lot of time to be able to raise capital. Um, and I think just having that understanding on what milestone I need to hit, and also keenly aware of what investors are looking for. So just having early conversations, just sort of working through on potential investors and what they're looking for, is part of uh, uh, a good startup's job. Is not to get surprised and leave that towards the end. Always sort of be proactive on what is it that you need to be able to do. You might have your own senses of where things need to be, but ultimately capital drives everything. And so whatever the cap investor are saying, I think at some point you do have to sort of align with that.
Well, you just recently closed out your second fund, raising roughly what, $88 million at a time when fundraising for new venture funds is not that easy. But yet you managed to break through as a new fundraiser, especially as you expand into Europe. Now, what made your pitch to investors really stand out? And how did your portfolio theory approach play into that?
Right. So that's a good question. So why us? Again, let me just put myself in the founder seat and say, why us? and why now. And so let me just sort of walk you through on that. So as I was indicating, the biostack and the biospectrum, right? These are the two sort of axes for us. And so I am driven very quantitatively, and so I thought there was an opportunity to apply a form of modern portfolio theory, where we lay out the type of assets we want to pick up on that biospectrum, from an idea turning out from a lab to IND to phase one to phase two to phase three, and then post market. In that biospectrum, we can pick up assets that are funds like LP positions, for example, flagship pioneering. They build the companies and take it all the way to the market at times. We can invest in funds that are just royalty based funds at phase three. We invest in companies who might be at phase one going into phase two. We invest in companies that are just spinning out. We invest in companies that are devices who are early but could have a significant inflection point. So you can start to see we place these bets at different volatility and different return sort of profiles. So that is kind of the part and parcel of modern portfolio theory. And if you can do that in a bit of an uncorrelated way, you actually can start to bend the curve, and that's where. So that, I think, was, or at least according to our investors, was a very sort of a fresh take on how to actually play in this space. And so we were lucky and blessed that about 3 years ago we launched with a proof of concept fund one. We made the right investments. We've done well with that, and luckily this year we were able to raise close to $90 million fund, and I would call it, given the market condition, in a pretty very very short time.
Sahir, I'm gonna tell you, man, that's pretty heady stuff you got going there, and the talents and the different angles in which you look to approach and solve problems. I think is phenomenal. I know that you're based in Houston, home to the world's largest medical center, and you said that it's still an underrated ecosystem for life science. So, what's happening there right now, and what excites you the most about what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where you just have to come to Houston and see it.
Yeah,
But just a couple of, as you mentioned rightly, that Texas Medical Center, as TMC,
yeah,
is the largest medical complex in the world. About 120,000 people come and work at this just one small district.
wow,
It is eighth largest business district in the United States. So all of that to say, there's lots of hospitals, research, R&D, best care, one of the best cancer hospitals in the world, a Nobel laureate of immunotherapy, all sort of
hmm,
science, a Baylor, the best heart surgeons, everything is happening here. What has typically been a little bit lacking was this other arc, which was the life sciences. How do we do innovation and then bring them out to commercialization? So over
yeah.
the last 5 to 6 years, at least, there are, so the Texas Medical Center and the state of Texas and on all the member institutions that are in Houston hospitals, they have some amazing initiatives.
Well, you should know, Sahir, I have been on the campus at Rice University. I've seen the ecosystem up close and personal, and I just think it's phenomenal. The talent, the brains, the resources that are all collected in one place to help move science forward. I think it's a wonderful thing. And you guys are just going to continue to do some really great things in that space. So let's now
Yeah, let me add
zoom
one more
out.
thing. Since you
Yeah, go
mentioned
ahead.
Rice University,
Uh-huh.
has also a biotech launchpad, which is
That's right.
which is an
That's right.
incubator, and they build companies. And fortunately, I'm on the board of that, and we're partners there. But yeah, that's another example of what's going
Yeah.
on in Houston.
That's right. Really good stuff. Let's zoom out a little bit, take a more big picture approach. With all of these technologies coming together, what do you think healthcare will look like, say, in the next 5 to 10 years? And how do you see this biotech revolution sort of unfolding over that period of time over the next decade or so?
Right. I mean, I think in the short term, we are starting to see therapies that are more precise in nature.
Mhm.
It gives causality to disease, so we can really be very precise. In some cases, just think about curing disease. So in December 2023, as we know, sickle cell through CRISPR, we just turn off the disease, the DNA level. It's a cure.
Wow.
And so I'm hoping we get a lot more of these trials getting in there. I'm hoping over the next 5 years, we cell and gene therapy, which has a big promise, but we have manufacturing issues. We can start to kind of think about how do we handle those challenges. On the AI front, in the care delivery, AI is raring to go. It's already making uh, a big difference when it comes to physician burnout through ambient sounds, ambient AI. We start to do better diagnosis, better prognosis. These digital biomarker tools enabled by AI, huge promise there, and it can move the needle forward. Also, the biggest opportunity is in preventative care,
Yeah.
and just ability to provide data to consumers based on their own sort of body. So, for example, wearables are, I think, in the next 5 years will play even a bigger role. And I also will see that these consumer wearables, there will be a consolidation at some points. Right now, we have the Fitbits and the Aura and all of that. I
Yeah.
feel over the 5 years there will be some consolidation where one device can do it kind of all. I'm hoping that's where we're going to go. But all I'm saying is that we are going from analog world of bio and medicine to a
Wow.
digitized world, from not just how we do drugs discovery and
Mhm.
development, but also how do we deliver care. That's the hope, near and long term future.
Really promising stuff. Okay, one last question here. This is for founders and investors who might be listening to this conversation that we're having. If there was one piece of advice that they could take away from this conversation, what would that be?
I mean, I would say that be excited and passionate about what you're doing, and if you are, you'll always find a way. And just stay with it, give it 100%, and but you gotta do it out of passion. Just
That's
gotta
right.
find that passion, and it will drive everything else. And stay humble, stay intellectually honest. Just
I
my two
love it.
cents.
Absolutely great advice. And we want to give a big thank you to Sahir Ali for joining us today. From parallel entrepreneurship to pioneer tech bio investing, his work is bridging two worlds to push healthcare forward. It's a masterclass in how data, biology together can really accelerate innovation and how founders and investors can navigate this new frontier. I'm Solomon Wilcots, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Russo Edge podcast. Thank you for listening today.